Speaksies.
When I need to buy shorts to fit my active lifestyle and sexy legs, there's only one place for me, chubbyshorts.com. Chubby's 5.5-inch inseam casual shorts made with super comfortable stretch fabric are perfect for any warm weather activity. My favorite Chubbies are my Cacinators, which go with any bandana. For more, go to chubbyshorts.com or look up the Chubbies app on your phone. chubbyshorts.com. Skies out, thighs out.
So I know what I was going to tell you.
Tell me.
So the other day, I've done my best to not have like the news on my phone or go anywhere for the news.
Right.
But I think I was on Twitter, which I get on there sometimes.
Right. Like I think I did a little heroin this weekend. You know, I know it's not good for me, but I need my fix.
Well, okay. Yes, I guess so. But something jumped out at me, and it was Caesar the No Drama Llama.
Caesar the No Drama Llama.
And when I saw it, I immediately had to know more about Caesar. So apparently, I don't know if you've ever been around a llama, but you know how we've talked about goats in the past and how goats are soothing. If you get someone's goat, you're ruffling their feathers.
But goats are good for yoga. We've learned that.
Yep.
You know, they calm horses. I think we learned researching it a few years ago. So goats are good.
Goats are good. Well, apparently So here's the deal with Caesar. So
hit me.
Caesar, his full name is Caesar McCool.
Okay.
And I kind of have mixed feelings about this. So I looked up Caesar the No Drama Llama just to see what's the scoop. And according to the New York Post.
Okay, so you know it's good.
Yeah. His full name is Caesar McCool. And that's his actual Christian name because his
he was baptized?
He was he was adopted by Larry McCool.
Okay.
And Larry has something called the Mystic Llama Farm.
Okay.
And he has been bringing Caesar to the protests.
Okay.
And apparently he's gone to over 50 protests. Now, it doesn't say what protests, so this could be anything.
Yeah.
But instead of what you might think, maybe he gets set on fire or tear gassed, instead...
Or spray painted.
Right, or spray painted. Instead, Caesar has been getting nothing but hugs.
Well, that's good.
And apparently, he not only accepts hugs, he gives hugs. So
I don't know how a llama does that.
Well, I don't either. And I looked for video, but all I saw were a bunch of pictures of Caesar and his quote emotional support hugs. So I just want to say more power to you, Caesar and Larry.
Yeah.
You're doing a good job out there trying to get people to calm down.
And to do that with a llama as opposed to an alpaca. So I don't know if you know that my family years ago had a bit of an alpaca phase. That my daughter, when she was younger, was really into alpacas. Yeah. And we went to an alpaca farm and learned way too much about alpacas. But from what I've seen is like alpacas are kind of like the classy guy, like wearing a tuxedo. And llamas are like their hillbilly cousins that they're embarrassed of.
Well, and that's what Larry said. Larry said most llamas are not like this. They're not cool.
Right.
He didn't say they're rude, but they're a little standoffish and
they're spitters, and they're like the hillbillies of whatever. What are alpacas and llamas like? What is
I
their
have
whole?
No idea.
I'm a animal enthusiast, so I should know that. But I do know this about alpacas: that you can harvest their fiber. It's not fur that they have. Filthy llamas probably have. They probably have fur, and it's probably all matted with Mountain Dew.
Okay, now. Filthy llama. Now I think I do see where you stand with llamas.
Yeah. Well, in comparison to alpacas, they are. I mean, I'm glad this guy's out there trying to bring peace to things, and I think what's really good about that is that we'll have more about that. Of even though we have our differences as people, we're not as far apart as we think. And if it takes a filthy alpaca to show us that, I think that's good.
Yes, I do too. So with that said, welcome to Origin of Speaksies. My name is Scott. I'm here along with my friend Steve, as always. And we're back together again.
We are.
In a room together.
We're reunited like Peaches and Herb.
Yeah.
Or Herb.
Yeah.
Or is it Herb?
I think it's Herb.
I think it's Herb.
I feel like it should be Herb.
Yeah. Nuts.
It's
I
herb
fought
when
for
it's-
years to say herb instead of herb, and then it's really blown up in my face.
Right.
When it really counts. I think it was because we talked about a llama and not an alpaca.
Right.
We had started out by talking about an alpaca, my diction would have been on point
Right.
from the beginning.
It's that hillbilly, as you called it, the hillbilly alpaca,
Yeah.
the llama. But no shade to Caesar, the no drama llama.
And
so
one more thing on that. I like that the guy's last name is McCool, which isn't real, but his first name is Larry. Like he
Right.
took the time to change his last name to McCool, but
Yeah.
stuck with Larry.
Well, I look at it the other way. I mean, if your last name is McCool, you can't name your kid like Dustin or something that would be traditionally more cool. Is Dustin a cool name?
Apparently
I don't
it
know.
is. I'm learning stuff about you.
For some reason that seems cool to me, but you sort of have to balance it out with a Larry
Yeah.
or some old school name. Stan would have worked as well. But
Yeah.
so let's get to the idioms or phrases. What do you have tonight, Steve?
Well, before I get to that, I want to talk about one of the new features we have this evening. I'm debuting a new segment,
Yes.
a quiz show, Know Your Onions, with
Yes.
one of our favorite guests, comedian Brian Bates.
Yeah, Brian's back.
You might have seen him on tour across the country. You might hear him every week on the Nateland Podcast, but you're also going to hear him tonight on Origin of Speaksies.
Absolutely.
So today we're going to talk about two terms that are relatively recent, and they're kind of political in nature.
And here we go.
No, not how. Here we go at all. So we're going to talk about some terms. I decided to be, down the middle. So I picked one that I associate kind of on the left side of things. One I associate with kind of the right side of things. And one of the things I'm going to talk about as we go through this is, in the end, we feel like we're in a very divided time, and it is a contentious time out there.
Yeah.
But as we wrap up today, I'm going to talk about how we're not as far apart as everyone seems to think. So if you've listened to our show before, we are not a political podcast. Scott and I both believe that, everything right now is too politicized. You can't do anything without seeing politics. I mean,
Right.
I'm glad that baseball's back because that's not politicized. So I can watch that and watch sports and be away.
Right. Well,
I've-
Steve,
I haven't caught up with my DVR yet. Have I missed anything?
I was going to say not to stop you, but you might want to hold off or just fast forward the first 15 minutes if you don't want to.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but otherwise, yeah.
Good. So, everything's politicized. We don't want to be that way. I know that sometimes I will kind of get on about how much I like Barack Obama.
Yeah.
He is our first Hawaiian president. He doesn't get enough credit for that. And he also inspired me to fight back against bears. When I freak out about bears, I think of Barack Obama, and he helps me. So otherwise, we're going to try to be as apolitical as possible. So I want everyone who's listening, I want this to be perfectly clear to them. Whether you're going to vote for the 70-plus-year-old white male bigot with a history of sexual assault accusations, or if you're going to vote for the other 70-plus-year-old white male bigot with a history of sexual assault accusations, we want all of you to be able to listen to our show.
Yes.
We want everyone, regardless of which 70-year-old white guy you're going to vote for,
Right.
please, we want you to listen.
What you're saying is much like our presidential candidates, we want to have a very diverse audience.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
We want everyone, regardless of which white guy, to stick with us today. So I took one that I associate with the left and one I associate with the right. And I'm going to start with the first one that I consider a little bit more the left-wing side. It's virtue signaling.
yes, that's one we've been hearing a lot of.
Yeah. So you might ask, what is virtue signaling?
What is virtue signaling? Well,
Thank
I
you.
think I know, but break it down for
Let's
us.
see what the Cambridge Dictionary says.
Oh, it's in the Cambridge Dictionary?
Oh, yeah, not just any dictionary. The Cambridge Dictionary.
Okay.
So virtue signaling is an attempt to show other people that you are a good person. For example, by expressing opinions that will be acceptable to them, especially on social media. Now, this is from the Cambridge Dictionary. So like the New York Post, it's good.
Right.
They also elaborate some more. Virtue signaling is a popular modern habit of indicating that one has virtue by merely expressing disgust or favor for certain political ideas, or cultural happenings. So there's kind of two ways I see how this works out, especially on social media.
Yeah.
So one, you talk about what you don't like. You
Right.
say, I hate this politician,
Right.
or I hate this news channel.
Or I hate alpacas or llamas, excuse me.
Well, everyone, I think that kind of, we're talking about how we have a lot of things in common. Everyone knows llamas are pretty,
Right.
hillbilly camels or something like that.
Yeah.
You can go on Facebook and talk about how stupid somebody is if they don't do this thing. So that's one way you can do that.
Yeah.
There's also the way that you can kind of show things off. Like, I'm going to put this frame on my Facebook page.
Right.
Or I'm going to tell everyone they need to go vote. Or I'm going to tell everyone that I voted.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to say if you eat kale, you probably worship Satan. There's things that you can say that are a little bit more on the positive side.
Okay.
So again, I wanted to be down the middle. We're going to have a left one, a right one. And I, as looking through this, I'm like, there's definitely some like kind of right side sort of things. You could say, I hate this news channel or I hate this politician. But I tell you what, honestly, broke the tie for me was when someone had sent me a picture of Nancy Pelosi and several other people in kente cloth kneeling down. And I had no idea. And the caption was, what if a time traveler from 6 months ago saw this picture?
Right.
And I was like, you know what? I think this is the way we're going to go for virtue signaling.
Yeah. And I think that, and just that one in particular, I don't even think it's being political to say that everyone I know saw that as virtue signaling.
Yeah. I think it was pretty good.
Yeah.
So going to the history of virtue signaling, I'm going to first refer to an article from the Boston Globe from 2015 by Mark Peters. Virtue Signaling and Other Inane Platitudes was the title of his article. The first paragraph says, have you changed your Facebook avatar to support a cause? Did you take the Ice Bucket Challenge? Have you ever offered your thoughts and prayers in the aftermath of a disaster? Do you express your beliefs through hashtags? That kind of hit me, kind of close.
You're a big hashtag guy.
Hashtag proud. I'm just a guy that just says stuff that,
Right.
Definitely doesn't say things to give himself cover.
Anyone that knows
by
you.
saying hashtag diversity to make sure if I
Right.
say anything, I'm okay.
Right.
So he continues. There's actually a name for that, virtue signaling. So as he goes through, he and other resources I've seen this too, note that a gentleman by the name of James Bartholomew is credited for having coined the term in an April 18, 2015 article in the London Spectator called Hating the Daily Mail is a Substitute for Doing Good. In that article, and this is from the Boston Globe, Bartholomew discussed pretentious signs at Whole Foods and talked about other things that people were getting angry at. And also pointed out, too, the common denominator of it's an empty gesture.
Right.
No one does anything. You're stating something, but not really accomplishing anything.
Right.
So even though most places will say that start with this Daily Mail article, Mr. Peters sent me to another resource that actually cites a earlier use in 2014 that discussed, quote, virtue signaling at its most pedestrian.
I mean, if you would have asked me how far back does it go, I would have said probably like 5 years. But then usually on these we find out that like, oh no, Abraham Lincoln, used this, or some newspaper in 1872 used this, but it really does just go back a few years, it sounds like.
Yeah. So the first use in 2004 that was found was from the forums of a website, which normally when I start hearing something's on a forum, I instantly start to pucker and, want to get like the eye wash out before I have to go look at it. From the website somethingawful.com.
Yeah.
And it relates to comments from a YouTube video that showed a KKK rally and a gentleman with a tuba that marched along with the KKK marchers and played, well, I'll just let you hear what it sounded like. So that to me is a pretty good use of virtue signaling.
That's pretty good.
And the official comment was by a gentleman by the name of Al Cowens, who I believe was that the gentleman that spent time with O.J. Simpson?
Oh, that was A.C. Cowlings. That was Al Cowlings.
Maybe
Could have been
is.
the same guy.
Maybe this guy finally redeemed himself. But anyway, his comment was virtue signaling at its most pedestrian. So
okay,
strong wordplay there. I'll
Yes.
give him credit for that. So that's the origin of it. I actually wish there was more. I think that's a pretty positive use to kind of mock people. But again, is it really changing anything by making someone look goofy?
So, let me pose this to you because I feel like, virtue signaling, I think, is mostly used now by people that are calling out folks doing what you're talking about. I don't think many people would sit there and say, I'm going to go virtue signal or whatever.
Yeah.
How do you feel about just the act of virtue signaling? Is it inherently a bad thing? Is it something that, sometimes it's okay to do?
Yeah. Well, let's go through a couple more examples. Okay. And I think at that point I'll be able to kind of give you a little bit more definitive thoughts. And I do have thoughts on it, as you surely know. So originally this was going to be one of our last episodes in our previous season. This would have aired in June. Pride Month is in June, hashtag Pride.
Yes.
And hashtag diversity and hashtag CYA. So I like to say those things. But as we know at the time in late May, the video of George Floyd's death was released. Social media was not a place, I think, for any sort of nuance or discussion about these sort of things.
No.
So I frankly abandoned the idea like a Minneapolis police station when it came down to it. So Pride Month is something that's always very interesting to me, that in the month of June, many corporations will suddenly embrace the rainbow. And you see it frequently on a lot of social media.
Right.
And a lot of pretty much everything.
Yeah.
And
it's like one big Skittles commercial.
It is. Yeah. It's like the month of June for Skittles.
Mm-hmm.
So the issue with that I've always had is not whether they're supporting gay rights or gay pride.
Mm-hmm.
It's the sincerity aspect of it, because there seems everyone's pretty prideful in the month of June, but what about the rest of the year?
Right.
So I did some research to see if I was the only person that felt that way, and I came across an article by Katie Martell on her website entitled "Pride or Pandering." This article is from 2019 and discussed what is the danger of rainbow pandering, and she gave some examples of.
You've got a term for it.
Yeah.
Rainbow pandering.
She also uses a term, woke washing and virtue hustling, which I think I'm going to leave for future episodes. And finally, a term, greenwashing, which I am aware of, which a little anecdote before we get into this. I remember many years ago, I learned from a very interesting documentary about Canon Films, the 1980s lowbrow movie production company. If you get a chance to watch it, the movie is entitled Electric Boogaloo, the wild, untold story of Canon Films. And in that, they discuss that the two partners that made up Canon Films had split off. And both of them, at the same time, were making movies about lambada, the forbidden dance.
Oh, my gosh.
So for those who don't remember what lambada is...
It rings like this bell from when I was a kid in the 80s.
Yeah,
Something about the lambada.
It's a forbidden dance.
Yeah.
And a really great way to kind of expand the definitions of both those. There's two movies, one called Lambada,
right,
and the other called The Forbidden Dance. So
right.
I forget which one. One of them was worse than the other. But what they did at the end is something they called greenwashing.
Okay.
And at the end, they gave a dedication to the rainforest in Brazil.
Oh.
And how this movie supported that, to kind of clean up the fact that they had just released a terrible movie about a trendy South American dry humping dance that somehow did spawn two movies.
Is it still forbidden? Do we know? Or
I don't think so anymore.
It's off the forbidden list.
We'll see.
So greenwashing is basically we're gonna. So would that be like if a clearly money making enterprise decides to support some cause?
Correct.
Okay. So we definitely see a lot of that.
Yeah. So related to that, this article, Ms. Martell discusses rainbow washing. According to her, it's when companies change their logos to a rainbow version. You have rainbow flags and banners everywhere, and have their employees go out and do marches and things like that.
Right.
And it seems to always expire at the end of June.
Yeah, and I do wonder about that. Like, I mean, is it something that if you are a gay person, do you feel like this is awesome? The company I work for has a rainbow, or do you feel pandered to? But I guess it's the same with any sort of, whether it be minority or whatever else. It's
and I think you and I have both worked for organizations that are very, very pro LGBTQ.
Yes.
So we've seen what happens when companies actually really mean it and do it for the entire year.
Absolutely.
So I think we've had some experience to know the difference of what happens.
So to make it very clear, companies that we don't work for have maybe done this.
Yeah, but not nowhere we've worked for.
Yes.
So, and anyone who's spent any time listening to us, if I am probably a little bit agnostic on anyone being thoughtful and true in anything that they represent. So when Bud Light suddenly decides that they need to have a collection of rainbow beers for 1 month, or Best Buy sends me emails about all the DVDs that I should watch with my LGBTQ plus. I left the plus off.
Yes,
I'm sorry about that.
Yes.
Friends, I'm a little disingenuous then. I will give one example that I think to me was one of the best. I will name the company. So last year, for some reason on Facebook, I follow Brooks Brothers on Facebook. Mm-hmm. And on the very last day of June, sometime after lunch, they produced this beautiful rainbow logo.
Yeah.
That I was very impressed that everyone on Facebook who also followed them decided to call them out on task for rainbow washing on the last day of June on a Friday.
Right.
Afterwards.
That's pretty bad. If you're going to do it right. Start at the beginning of the month. I think a theme that I feel like we're kind of seeing is, it's nice that you're saying this, and we understand. I mean, I understand why companies do it, and I'm sure not all of them are disingenuous, but at the same time, it's a very good way to market, because you're almost hoping for someone to call up and complain about that, so you can point to them and then do some bonus virtue signaling. Well, I think that you just kind of nailed it. I think that if you're a company or if you're an organization or whatever, if you say, well, hey, look, we do this, and we had this person come speak, or we had, it's like you can sort of, I guess for me, whether it's companies, businesses, or just individuals, I'm much more about just what are your actual actions like in life versus what are you putting on your social media. But it doesn't mean, and I have to remind myself that virtue signaling doesn't make, like, I'm tempted to do it, and I've done it before. I know I've done it before. I put something out there and
I don't feel like I need to do it. I mean, I feel like I live my life #pride year round.
You are just one big hashtag.
There's no rainbow washing to me.
Right. Well, so but I can see the temptation to do it. It doesn't make a person bad, I don't think, but it's, you'd like to see some congruency with reality also, or if there's something you don't like or something you'd like to see, then
so I think
do something.
So one of the things she discusses, it's year round. Does a company do it year round? Is it just a rainbow logo, or is there good, do they do things to support the community throughout the year? It addresses real community concerns. Again, not just superficially putting something up there. And it's measurable. It's something that's actually done, that you could say, we did this. It's not, we put this logo on there because this demographic likes it when their Bud Light Rainbow bottles come out.
Right.
And maybe they do. But anyway, that for me, I think, was a good standard also to look at virtue signaling of, is it, if it's nice that you're virtue signaling, but are you actually doing anything?
Right. Like, and I think one of the problems could be, though, what are you going to do if, hey, this month is for this, and if you can't really do it year round, because then you're going to step on the other months that are important to other people. So how does that work?
That gets into sincerity. You can't like and maybe that's the difference between virtue signaling and actually making a difference and doing something.
Right. Maybe you just keep your normal logo all year round.
Right.
And then actually do things
that, other than
like
change
hire
your logo.
people not based on protected categories, things like that, which I think is really the important thing. So okay, but is it really, it sounds like you're coming down on the side of being against virtue signaling, and maybe I'm picking that up wrong, but I mean, is it really a bad thing if it's for a good cause? Like, so you mentioned the ice bucket challenge earlier. What's the harm in dumping a bucket of ice water over your head, or whatever else? What's the harm of putting something out on your social media? What do you think?
Yeah. Well, I think the ice bucket actually is a good one, because a lot of people dumped ice water buckets on their head, but how many people then gave any money to the association? So I think that kind of gets back to me. What I don't like about virtue signaling is I think the worst thing about it is it makes people feel like they're doing something, but they're not, which necessarily isn't worth thing. But I think that really bad part of it is another way to talk past people and feel self-righteous about yourself. And these, I've picked out examples of, kind of things that maybe we'd all would think are egregious. But I'm sure we all do it in things of whatever are, I know I put the blinders on of like, all these other people are virtue signaling, but this is something I believe in, so therefore it's okay. And I certainly have, you've known me long enough to, self-righteousness. I'm pretty good at that. I've got that down. If there was a hashtag for that, maybe that's what I need to start doing next time I do my hashtag pride.
Yeah. I was going to say,
hashtag self-righteous, just to be.
Yeah. Oh, I like that one. Let's get that trending.
So virtue signaling, something we see all the time on social media. We'll talk a little bit more about social media and how I don't necessarily think it's making our country any better or bringing us any closer. But I would say I'm kind of down on it just because, again, it's another way for people to feel like, myself included, to feel like they're doing something, but maybe not make anything better.
If you go to, let's say you go to a shelter and you help feed the homeless.
Yeah.
Probably the best thing you can do is do that without even posting anything. But if you do that and you post, that's probably okay too. But if you just hashtag, end hunger, maybe you replace doing that good thing with the hashtag is I think your point. All right, so we ready for
new slang?
We're going to do new slang now.
New slang when you notice the
All right, so today's new slang is one that I have wanted to do for a long time, and it fits really well in this episode, which is gaslighting.
Gaslighting.
So gaslighting is a word that I had heard a few years ago. It's really grown in popularity over the last couple of years. I got figured out what it meant just by how it was used, but was very confused about the origin or why you would say gaslighting. So is this one that, obviously I don't even need to ask you. You've heard this a lot.
I've heard it and I've seen it on social media, but I've generally seen it in the context that I won't even finish whatever's being, like I was like, I just need to get out of here. So whatever's happening isn't going to be good.
Yeah. So I'm going to talk about that. So
great.
It's a term that has really become weaponized, for lack of a better term. It's a term that people like to use, and I'll give you an example. I just Googled gaslight. So if you want to have an idea of how often this word is being used now and how in what various ways it's being used, just do a quick Google. So I did a Google search and I clicked on news, and just like in the last week, here are some headlines. Is someone gaslighting you? Racial gaslighting made me feel like a foreigner in my own home. 7 signs of gaslighting in the workplace. And then a completely separate article, by the way.
Yeah.
7 warning signs of gaslighting.
Wow.
Yeah. And here's another one. This is great. This is from CNN. This is the article. Quote, I have some bad news about The Notebook. So spoiler alert, Ryan Gosling is apparently gaslighting Rachel McAdams in that movie. And then she goes on to list a bunch of other classic movies, not as good as The Notebook.
Now, why do they have to besmirch The Notebook?
Right.
Which, by the way, is my test to see if anyone can, break into my Facebook account. Because the only thing, or, is marketing off me because of that, because the only thing I've noted on my Facebook account that I like is my favorite book's The Notebook, my favorite movie's The Notebook, my favorite soundtrack.
Wait, so ironically,
music from The Notebook.
You're gaslighting the ad wizards out there.
I'm still not sure what this word is.
Well, I'm going to give you the definition, but
all right.
But by listening to these headlines, and by the way, these are all from the last week.
Yeah. None of these are good. None of us are going to be better people after reading the content of these articles.
Well,
I have a feeling.
I didn't read. I started to read a couple of them and got mad. I did read the one about The Notebook. Just I kind of scanned through, and it's exactly what you think it's going to be. It's the writer explaining how every male protagonist in every movie you've ever seen is gaslighting the female. So if you go back to the I don't know, the teen movies, even 16 Candles and some of those movies. And I'm like, well, dude, I guess if you're going to call it that gaslighting, courting in general is just gaslighting. For us to have a chance with women, you got to kind of be persuasive in some sense. At least I do. I don't know about you, but
what is it?
So the definition of gaslighting, as defined by, now I didn't go Cambridge on this one. This is OED.
They're pretty good.
Yeah. If you can't get
they're okay.
So the definition, according to the Oxford English Dictionary, is to manipulate a person by psychological means into questioning his or her own sanity.
Okay.
So basically, Steve, if you were to say, Scott, it's if you came into my house and it was 85 degrees and really hot, and you're like, bro, it's hot in here, which I don't think you've ever called me bro. But
Yeah.
anyway, and I was like, what are you talking about? I'm freezing. And I was like wearing a sweatshirt. You know,
Right.
it's like you're trying to make the person think they're crazy. It's a very specific type of psychological,
Yeah.
you know, and I've done that with people to mess around with them. You know, like somebody will say, hey, what's that thing? And you're like, what are you talking about? I don't see that.
Right. But this sounds like something that's like dangerous.
Well, yeah. And so it's dangerous. So basically, I think one of the reasons why the word has come up so much recently, well, number one, it's kind of it's just a popular thing to say. It makes something sound much more, what's the word I'm looking for? Diabolical than it maybe is. Maybe it is. Maybe it isn't. Right. So recently, I think we can all agree that there's been a pretty big gap between things you hear from the media versus things you hear from, let's just say, the president. And so I think a lot of people feel like they're losing their minds a little bit because it's like you don't know who to believe. I've heard that a bunch just talking to friends. Like, I don't know what to believe. I don't know if I got this news outlet telling me this. I've got this politician telling me this. I've got Fauci saying this. And then I've got, you know, Dr. Sanjay Gupta telling.
Yeah.
So I think that people, if they're hearing things that they feel like that person is specifically trying to lie to them.
I don't care who your president is. If you watch anyone who is... So what you've told me about gaslighting, all I can think about is every president's press secretary, which basically their job is to lie. But this makes it sound a little bit more sinister. And
well, if you say... It's almost like a Jedi mind trick of Jedi mind tricking somebody. So if you sit there and say, don't believe what you are seeing with your eyes, believe what I'm telling you, right?
Yeah.
And so there's a joke by Richard Pryor where he says, I think he's talking about whether or not he cheated. I don't even know the premise, but he basically says, who are you going to believe, me or your lying eyes? You know? So, and that's gaslighting, so where did this come from? I recently looked this up and was kind of surprised I hadn't heard of this movie. There was a movie called Gaslight, and it was from 1940. Excuse me, the movie came out in 1944.
Okay.
It was an American movie, and it starred Ingrid Bergman and Charles Boyer. So the plot of the movie basically is that they're newlyweds. They move into this London townhouse that the wife inherited. But basically the husband is into all sorts of nefarious stuff, and she starts noticing weird things happening. So the gaslight, the light in front of their house or on their stairs would dim down and then get brighter again.
Okay.
And he was doing that, but he'd say, I have no idea what you're talking about. The light hasn't changed at all.
Okay.
And so she started kind of going insane, thinking that she was going insane. So it wasn't just the light, but it was like he would do other things. He'd leave, you know, we used to do this to our teacher all the time. We'd like move her stapler, you know, and then she'd come in and go, somebody move my stapler. And like, no, what are you talking about? You know, it makes you feel crazy. And so that's where the term comes from. So do you like this term? What are your thoughts after hearing all that?
You could clarify for me. So sometimes in the context, I think I've seen this, and again, generally when I start seeing this term, I know it's not a argument that's going to end rationally.
Right.
Is this also a way that you could weaponize? You and I are going to argue, and I'm going to disagree with you, but I'm not just going to disagree with you. I'm going to accuse you of trying to psychologically, you know, not just say we have different premises.
Yep.
And come from different values on this.
Yes, because you can make it into, because technically if somebody's really doing this, I mean, it is a form of abuse. I mean, it really is abusive. Like if you're doing this to somebody, the thing is, it's like you can't put everything in one big bucket. Like there's a difference between, not to get all serious, but I mean, you know, there are different types of.
So like in economics, if a Marxist and a non-Marxist are discussing things, their value systems are probably pretty different. They're going to look, you know, the premise of what they discuss is, you know, coming from two totally different places probably.
Right. Yeah.
So is the other one psychologically manipulating them, or are they just, or, you know, is it Thanksgiving with your uncle who really likes whatever politician?
Yeah, and so that's why I said before, I think people are applying, like you said, malice or some sort of diabolical plan to something that's just a disagreement. If Steve's going around telling everybody that something about me that I don't like, and then I am saying he's lying to you, this is the truth, I'm not gaslighting you. I'm just telling you.
Yeah, or calling you a liar.
I'll go ahead and say, I don't like the term. I mean, in a way, I like the term because it is it came from a movie.
Yeah.
It's a very specific thing. So like the term itself is fine. I just don't like the broadening of like everything is gaslighting.
Yeah, and I will agree with you on that, and can also agree that it's a term I don't like. It could be, it has potential to be good, but like you said, it's used to take something that's just you're arguing and you disagree on stuff, but as with everything, we got to make it more. We got to be more self-righteous. I'm not just disagreeing with you. You're
evil.
You are trying to do this, so I can be righteous in myself.
That's right.
And again, social media is a lot of places where I get to see this, which obviously 90% means it's going to be an off term. So I say thumbs down to gaslighting. Down,
especially since we now can't watch The Notebook among many other movies.
Gosh, they're taking that away from us.
Gaslighting,
now.
Good gravy.
Actually, though, cancel culture did get rid of The Notebook. It probably, that would probably be one of its best merits.
Right. Give us Gone with the Wind Back, and we'll give you The Notebook.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, and again, to your theme of, I think you mentioned earlier, we're going to try to make a unifying
message
podcast,
here of it's not a good thing to develop terms and actions to talk past people you disagree with.
Because words are important, and that is something obviously we believe in with this podcast. So that is today's news slang.
So for my final origin of the evening, go to our friend Elon Musk.
Oh, okay. I didn't see that coming.
Yeah. Creator of Tesla, husband of Grimes.
Yeah.
Who I've actually started listening to.
Oh, yeah. She's one of my favorites.
And so I'll listen to her in a few years. So little bit off topic, keeping with me being a distant old man, catching up on stuff. I've been listening to a lot of is it Lana Del Rey or Lana Del Rey?
Oh, Lana Del Rey.
Lana.
Yeah.
There was 3 ways to say it, and I picked the worst.
Yeah.
You know what it was? It was talking about those llamas earlier. It just got in my head.
Yeah, Llama Del Rey.
Yeah.
Ooh.
No, she's definitely an alpaca Del
Okay.
Rey. So I've been listening to a lot of that.
Yeah, she's good. Do you like it?
I do actually like it.
You've always been you've always found good. I mean, let's be honest. You didn't discover Lana. She's not like some. Yeah. But you've always had good taste in female musicians. You've turned me on to a few as well.
Well, I need to figure out what you're listening to now. So 10 years from now, I can start listening.
Well, I was listening to Grimes about 7 years ago, and
so
I like her older stuff better. I'm gonna sound like the biggest hipster, but her first couple albums were fantastic.
Well, I'll let you know more about that in 3 years when I start listening to her full time then. So Elon Musk, on May 17th, 2020, posted something on his Twitter.
Oh.
Take the red pill.
Yeah, remember that. That caused quite the stir.
Yeah. And again, a constant theme we're seeing today is when something shows up on social media, nothing good's coming after that.
So do you think that was a virtue signal by him? No, that really doesn't fit virtue signal.
Maybe. Let's see. So I told you we were going to do one that was associated, I think, more kind of left side of things, virtue signaling. So now we're going to do one that I think is associated a little bit more with the right side of things, and that is red pill. So you've seen this as take the red pill, being red pilled.
Oh, so definitely take the red pill, and I want to hear what you have to say. I kind of have somewhat of a thought of what that means. I haven't heard getting red pilled.
I don't think that actually is a thing. Okay. I think I gaslit myself. I got in my own head.
You gaslit me because I feel crazy.
Stinking llamas. Okay, so
#gaslit.
Cambridge Dictionary. So we're going to go
back
there.
To the Cambridge.
Back to the Cambridge.
You're a Cambridge guy now.
Well, I am. We're also going to discuss knowyourmeme.com in a few minutes. So I don't want to get too high and mighty. I'm going to water that down pretty quick.
Right.
So, Cambridge Dictionary offers 2 definitions of red pill. So the first one is beliefs, choices, or information that would allow you to see the world as it really is, even though you would feel safer or happier if you did not. This refers to a scene in the movie The Matrix, where a character is offered a choice between a red pill, which reveals the true world, and a blue pill, which keeps it hidden.
Yeah.
So
great movie, by the way. That movie, standard issue with every DVD player, I think, in 2001.
Oh,
right?
Yeah. You couldn't walk out with you had to have that. Your DVD player wouldn't function.
That's right.
So before we get off to the second definition, got to give a shout out to Keanu Reeves And, we've talked about a lot of things that have been lost because of COVID and the times we live in.
Right.
One, commercials, because every commercial now says, in the time we live...
in these uncertain times.
Yeah. But Bill and Ted 3...
Yeah.
Which I was looking forward to actually going... That would have been probably the last time I'd been seen in a movie theater until Disney decided they needed some more money from Star Wars.
Right.
And I would have been back out there for that. But Bill and Ted 3 has been pushed. I've seen something recently...
Oh, they pushed it. I thought it's still coming out on demand. No.
Yeah, but it's not the same. And
yeah.
I'm really looking forward to that movie. But am I $30 looking forward to it?
Right. Yeah.
I would say no.
Hey, if there's one movie experience you need to have in the theater, it's Bill and Ted 3.
Be.
Yeah, it might be. Who knows?
Speaking of Keanu Reeves movies with number 3 in it, had the pleasure of watching with my nephew Rod, watching John Wick 3, which is, I think, the best of the John Wick movies.
Is it really? See, I still haven't seen 2 or 3, and I need to watch 2 because I think it's streaming somewhere now.
2's it's streaming at my house. We'll get to it next time you come over. 2,
perfect.
But if you need to go straight to 3, I think you'll. The good thing about John Wick movies, it's not like you have to get out.
Yeah.
I got to get the outline out, and you have like a wall with like things attached by string. You'll figure it out pretty quick, and pretty much they tell you everything you need to know in the first 2 minutes of John Wick 3.
Oh, that's good to know.
But just got to give a shout out to Keanu Reeves right now. Looking forward to Bill and Ted 3. So first definition comes from The Matrix in a scene where Morpheus, who's also in John Wick 3, Larry Fishburne.
Oh, he is? By the way, quick aside.
Yeah.
I just watched last night. Have you ever seen the movie The King of New York?
Yes.
Holy shnikes. I just watched it for the first time. Where's that movie been on my life?
It's a great movie.
Larry Fishburne's incredible in that. Obviously, Walken is great. And it's got like a young David Caruso. It's got Wesley Snipes. It's got other people. But anyway, sorry. We can get back on track. But I'm gonna Fishburne phase now. Because, of course...
Who's Chris?
Good Lord. Was it one of the cops or one of the bad guys?
The star.
Christopher Walken.
Christopher Walken.
I said Walken, yeah.
Okay, I blanked on that, but he was Frank White.
He was unbelievable, Frank White. So,
and that's why...
He's like, I love money. I mean, just the way sorry, that's not even an impression. It's just the way he read these lines.
With us right now. That's why Biggie Smalls called himself
the Black Frank White.
Yeah.
And I thought, you know what it was? I had gotten that, and we're getting way off, but I had gotten it confused with the movie Suicide Kings, which is also Walken.
Yeah.
And it's derivative. It's okay. I saw it in college. And so whenever I would hear anything or see anything about the King of New York, I'm like, see, it's like okay. And I went to watch it last night, and it's incredible. So Larry Fishburne was phenomenal, and he was Morpheus. So that's number 1. So what's the next one?
So the red pill, where does this come from? This, according to Business Insider, and
I think that's the first time we've had Business Insider.
Oh, they've been here more than you've realized.
Oh.
Business Insider's here.
They're inside
so
the show.
They actually referred to themselves in this article, about an article from 2013 about an internet community on Reddit. So like the New York Post, it's good.
Right.
The red pill. So the red pill, according to the subreddit, described itself as founded on the general belief that women have it better than men. Red pill is not a dating advice bulletin, but rather a forum for people, men mostly, exploring an ideology that revolves around almost exclusively around gender.
Yeah, well, first of all, I really don't think they're having to beat the women off with a stick.
Yeah.
It's mostly for men. No, it's all men.
So I think you get a good idea of where this goes. From there. So I've heard of this before. Did some more research. Came to knowyourmeme.com. Thank you, Cambridge Dictionary, for giving me some more gravitas before I had to say the words knowyourmeme.com out loud. So the men's right movement was something I had heard of like vaguely and didn't really think it was real, and I still don't think it is. I'll talk about a little bit more about them here in a moment, but that's where apparently it originated from.
Okay.
And you'll see why in a moment. Why I'm not going to spend too much time on them. So back to the present. Let's go to an article that also discusses this a little bit from the Washington Post. Democracy dies in darkness.
Dum, dum, dum.
I always have to say that when I say the Washington Post. Democracy dies in darkness.
We need that guy with the tuba.
We do need
playing
that.
in the background while you say that.
Or Christian Bale. So Sonia Raw has an article this past May after Elon Musk comment how the red pill got to Elon Musk. So we know it started with The Matrix, was picked up by something called the men's rights movement, and then kind of came back out later to be more something that conservative types would say when they understood reality, or that the reality, if they've taken the red pill, they see things how they are. So according to Ms. Rao, quoting, the mainstream use of the term, which found a home on Reddit and surged after Gamergate as well as Donald Trump's election, reached the pop culture sphere 2 years ago when Kanye West tweeted his support of Candace Owens, a black activist in the pro-Trump internet who formerly used the social media handle Red Pill Black. Owens, as the Washington Post, Democracy Dies in Darkness, is known for promoting her, quote, thesis that black people have been brainwashed to vote for Democrats by the media, and that they would vote for Republicans if they only could be red-pilled by recent converts like her. So that was good. So anyway, with something that I like that we've seen has gone from the Matrix to Reddit to President Trump to Kanye West to Candace Owens, who I will give a shout out. Red Pill Black is just, those are 3 words that are fun to say together. Like, that's a band. I want to see them when they open for Foreigner. I would be there to watch that concert. So, of course, the article goes on to pretty much discuss how they're not a big fan of that term. As the Washington Post, Democracy Dies in Darkness, is not generally thrilled with anything that has to do with Donald Trump. So I did some more research on what the men's right movement is, because I've heard of it and seen a little bit of it, and I went to the Southern Poverty Law Center, who has a entry on something called male supremacy, and has a very long article discussing many facets of the men's movement and things that go along with that.
Do a quick Control F search. I bet you can find the word gaslit.
Well, the thing that got me that was interesting was I'm expecting to see, after all this information, there's got to be a lot of organizations that do this, and came down to one called A Voice for Men from Houston, Texas.
Voice for Men?
Voice for Men.
Wasn't that a singing group?
That's Boys for Men.
Boys to Men.
Are you gaslighting me? Are you trying to trick me into thinking Voice to Men?
Voice, what's it called?
Voice to Men.
That's not real.
Don't get, again, I think you're trying to get, sorry, I wish we had never discussed that term, because now I'm going to see everything
that's the
differently.
problem. Now everyone thinks, no, but that's, okay, so they have an article about this, and
and there's a lot of information, so if you want to look up male supremacy, there's a lot to read. But when it came to like actual movements and groups that are around, didn't seem to see too much.
Right.
And I'm aware a little bit of, I'm sure there's other things that are out there. Like I remember hearing something about people who were called involuntary celibates a couple years ago.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. When you said the Reddit group, I was like, well, this is just another incel group or something. But, I mean...
It sounds like a bunch of nerds on the internet who are keyboard commandos.
Exactly.
Which maybe that's not the thing that's going to unite the right and left as we conclude later today. So this made me think of a term I'd seen recently that I really wanted to bring up, and I think this episode's a good way to bring it up. It's called nut picking. And this originated from a blogger named Kevin Drum from Mother Jones Magazine. And what is nut picking? I shall tell you. So nut picking was a term coined by Kevin Drum. He was blogging, mostly blogs for Mother Jones, but at this point was with Washington Monthly. And it was a name he coined for the moronic practice of trawling through open comment threads in order to find a few whack jobs who can best be held up as evidence that liberals are nuts. And it's something I think that you see on both. This is definitely something that if you want to, make an argument, you find the craziest person that's out there and then try to hold them up as, evidence of who, this is, well, if you believe this, you like this one thing, you're on this person's side.
I like that term because it's something that we've all seen it happen for years, but instead of having to explain the whole thing, you just say that.
To wrap up Red Pill with Elon Musk, brought it back to prominence. Again, it's something that started with The Matrix. It was picked up by something called the men's rights movement, which I am not sure is a real thing, but apparently it was to some extent.
Right.
Generally is used in kind of memes for people on the right side saying, I took the red pill and my eyes were open to reality. Right. And in the same way, I think that virtue signaling is a way a lot of people on one side of the fence talk past people and are self-righteous. I think this is the inverse of virtue signaling, to go out there and kind of, I'm self-righteous and look at me, I took the red pill. I see how things as they really are. You don't, you're too dumb to get this.
Right.
So
yeah, that's right.
I think good counterbalance. Right. So I want to end this episode on a positive note. And
positive Steve.
Positive
Season
Steve
4.
is here.
Gonna keep it going.
I'm always positive. Positive that alpacas are much better than llamas.
Yeah.
So, and again, we want this to be an apolitical podcast that everyone can listen to.
Right.
So I'm going to get as close to the line as I can with that. So I'm going to reflect on an article I read back in June entitled, "I'm Not Hateful, You Are." For background, the writer of the article is a gentleman by the name of David French. He is a conservative writer, but also known as a hashtag Never Trump conservative. Right. So with that description, I've potentially alienated 90% of our listeners between those two terms.
Yep.
But have I really? So in this article, David French discusses the findings of an organization known as Beyond Conflict, and they recently released a study called America's Divided Mind. In a quote from their findings, large majorities of both Democrats and Republicans substantially exaggerate the extent to which members of the other party dehumanize, dislike, and disagree with them, creating a significant divide between perception and reality. Continues a little bit more. The more we are disliked and dehumanized by members of the other party, the more likely we are able to express greater dislike and dehumanization towards them. So one of the things that was very interesting is they posted the results of findings on how far apart people believe they are, then actually how far apart we are in reality. So they took two contentious subjects, immigration and gun control. Yeah. So on each topic, the other side, it looks like a wall. It looks like the Red Sea being parted. That there's just these two walls on far left and far right.
Of what they think the other side thinks.
But in reality, when the results were put together, it was basically a giant bell curve in the middle that people are not as far apart as we think we are. So again, not to say that there aren't real things to be upset about, that there aren't real differences in our country right now, and that there is going to be a very contentious election between one 70-year-old white man and another 70-year-old white man. But just to leave this as something that but all three terms that we discussed today, I think are ones that we see in social media. And I guess if the big theme of this would be is, keep in mind what you post on social media, and ourselves included. Yeah. Of course, we don't want to knock all social media. We want you to come to Speaksies, at Twitter, and at Speaksies at Instagram. Right. Where we will be positive. We will try to, appeal to all voters. But, think about that. There are going to be arguments we're all going to have. There's going to be real disagreements we have on things. But, keep hope alive. We're not as far apart as I think we are. And, I'm going to try not to virtue signal or red pill or
nut pick. Whatever. Don't nut pick.
Don't nut pick. Right. And I think if you could summarize what we've discussed today, good advice for everyone. Don't nut pick.
Don't nut pick.
Words to live by.
All right. So before we wrap up the show, it's time for our brand new segment. I'm very excited for Know Your Onions. So coming up, we're going to have Know Your Onions with Brian Bates. All right. Brian Bates is a Nashville-based stand-up comedian. You may have seen his dry bar comedy special, Uber Important, which was just released this year, or heard him on Stand Up Nashville, which airs on the Circle Network. He can also be heard on Laugh USA, on SiriusXM Radio, and the Nateland Podcast with friend and fellow comic Nate Bargatze. Brian, welcome to the show. How have you been?
Good, man. Thanks for having me. I never imagined when I was on your show a few months ago during the quarantine that I would be back on and we're still in a quarantine.
Yeah.
Gosh, that's right.
But you are, ever since you've been on our podcast, now you're on another podcast.
That's
so
true.
I don't want to take credit for you in the Nateland podcast, but maybe I will. Just a little bit of credit for that. So, Brian, something I've wanted to ask you since we spoke last time.
Yeah.
Did you ever get that spider that had taken over your condo, or is he still?
No, it's funny you should say that because I just moved this past weekend. So the condo is empty and someone else is going to be living there. So I don't know if he's there or not, but it's not my problem anymore. It's their problem.
Wow. Wait, did you move because of the spider?
Yeah. After talking to you guys, I was like, I better just get out of here.
Yeah.
I think he moved because Steve was stalking you at the apartment because the last time he happened to know everything about you. But
that is true. I remember looking out my door to see if he was out there.
Yeah. Well, okay, so we are going to play a little game we call Know Your Onions. Brian, let me tell you really quickly the rules of the game here.
Okay.
We're going to ask you a couple of questions about the origins of a word or phrase where you're going to get multiple choices, and you can just choose the one you think is correct.
Okay. Let's do it.
All right. So here we go.
All right. Know Your Onions.
Know Your Onions is the name of the segment. And question 1 is, which of the following is the true origin of the idiom cost an arm and a leg? Is it A, in George Washington's day, there were no cameras. One's image was either sculpted or painted. Some paintings of Washington showed him standing behind a desk with one arm behind his back, while others showed both legs and both arms. Prices charged by painters were not based on how many people were to be painted, but how many limbs were to be painted. The more limbs, the higher the cost of the painting, hence the expression, okay, but it'll cost you an arm and a leg. Is it B, the expression to cost an arm and a leg was coined near the end of the Second World War? There were many soldiers who lost arms or legs during the war, which was a very high cost to pay for their country. Or is it C, the popular phrase cost an arm and a leg was coined by a wheelchair salesman in the 70s with a morbid sense of humor, and his name has been lost to history. So in summary, was it how many limbs were painted?
A.
Yep.
That's A. Is it B, coined near the end of the Second World War because people were literally giving their arms and legs? Or C, the wheelchair salesman with a morbid sense of humor?
Well, I'm going to be honest. You did a good job with that because after A, I was like, it's A because his description was so specific. But then you threw B at me, and I'm like, well, that sounds good too. And hey, maybe C. That's a wild card. That could be to trip me up. So you're good with this.
Thank you.
There was nothing obvious, but I'm going to still go with A. My answer is A.
Okay. The correct answer is actually B. But don't feel bad because this is honestly probably one of the most popular folk etymologies.
No.
All right. So we're going to move on to question 2.
Question 2.
I'm going to get this one.
Which of the following is the true origin of the phrase square meal? Is it A, the expression square meal is an extension of a mathematical dad joke that has been passed on for generations? Why was 6 afraid of 7? And the answer, as we all know, is 7, 8, 9. But why did 7 eat 9? Well, that's because you're supposed to eat 3 square meals a day. Is it B, the phrase a square meal originated from the British Royal Navy practice of serving meals on square wooden plates? So square plates could be stowed away easily and wooden ones would not break, no matter how violent the ship's movement might become. Or is it C, a square meal just means a good, honest meal? The use of square to mean honest and straightforward goes back to at least the 16th century. For example, square play or fair and square, which were used by writers of the time, including William Shakespeare. So again, in summary, we've got the horrible mathematical dad joke is A. We've got the British Royal Navy serving food on square wooden plates, which is B. Or C, it just means a good, honest meal, square meal. What do you think, Brian?
My initial thought was B because that seemed to make sense to me, but I'm like, I don't think they would do B and then B again.
Oh.
I don't think they would do that. I don't think it's the dad. So I'm going to go with C. Just, it's a good old square meal.
The correct answer is C. You did it.
All right.
You did a good job of picking up the pattern, because both of these kind of had a pattern.
You did like SAT strategy on that. I like that.
I know. He just like a beautiful minded.
Yeah.
If that's I can use that as a verb.
I think you just did.
I did. Good job, Brian. You nailed it.
Thank
All
you.
right. So for your final question, Brian, question 3. By the way, Brian Bates, you can hear him every week on the Nateland Podcast with new episodes every Wednesday. By the way, it is also my wife's favorite podcast.
Oh.
Hands down. And that's not like blowing smoke at people.
Mm-hmm.
She actually, I found out, does not know I even do a podcast. She thinks
happening?
I think she thinks you and I have something going on the side. But frankly, it gets me out of the house. And I think she's willing to put up with that. And putting on a bandana before I left probably didn't help either with, any of that. But that's beside the point. Brian Bates is a proud graduate of Middle Tennessee State University.
Is this question 3? You just seamlessly went into that. Okay.
Home of the Blue Raiders.
Yeah.
Located in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. And the last time we talked, I had some Middle Tennessee State knowledge, but we didn't get a chance to use it. So I had to bring it back.
Yeah.
So
I thought you had something that I didn't even know, or that I refuted.
Steve said.
Oh, that's right. I
What
made
was
it the rival.
I thought the rival, yeah.
Oh.
And I guess, you know what? If I have to choose Brian Bates or Wikipedia, it's Brian Bates. That's who I go with.
Yeah.
So Murfreesboro, Tennessee, was not always known as Murfreesboro. The city was originally named Cannonsburg after Newton Cannon, a representative of the assembly for the local area. It was renamed Murfreesboro in 1811. So, Brian, for your third and final question, who is the true historical figure that Murfreesboro, Tennessee is named after? Is it option A? He was a lieutenant in the Hertford County Militia when the Revolutionary War began, was commissioned on September 1st, 1775 as a captain in the 2nd North Carolina Regiment of the Continental Army. He saw action at the Battle of Monmouth on June 28, 1778, and achieved his greatest renown for leading a successful diversionary attack against British defenses in the Battle of Stony Point on July 15, 1779. Following the Revolutionary War, he migrated to Williamson County, Tennessee, living on land granted to him after the American Revolution, and remained there until his death in 1809. Option A, Hardy Murphy, Revolutionary War hero. Or is it B, he was an American politician who served as governor of Tennessee from 1835 to 1839. He was a longtime foe of Andrew Jackson and spent much of his political career opposing Jacksonite policies. Like his nemesis, Andrew Jackson, this man was also an orphan. But unlike Andrew Jackson, he was adopted by a Romanian circus who trained him in the carny arts, including hatchet throwing. This skill was also very helpful in battling Indians, but also helped him defuse a potential duel with Andrew Jackson. After a confrontation with Jackson had felt his wife had been insulted, Jackson took steps to initiate a duel with this man. Andrew Jackson, however, who in his lifetime was in over 100 duels, then found out who he was going to battle, and when Jackson heard that this man was requesting the weapons would be hatchets instead of pistols, negotiated from pursuing satisfaction. Option B, Charles Murphy, governor of Tennessee, enemy of Andrew Jackson, and hatchet-throwing expert. Or is it your final option, C? This man was an officer in the American Revolutionary War and an important figure in the early history of the Southwest Territory and state of Tennessee. During the French and Indian War, this man was appointed to the post of Brigadier General of the Salisbury District Brigade and participated in the initial phases of the Cherokee American Wars against the Cherokee Indians. After the violence of his campaigns against the natives, this man renounced warfare and retired to his farm. However, when the American Revolution began, his oldest son Gabriel joined the battle, and his second son Thomas was killed. This man then took it upon himself to join the fight with the colonials. Ensuing success and many deaths that he took, he was nicknamed the Ghost by the British. Option C, Edward Murphy, leader of the Salisbury District Brigade, nicknamed the Ghost by the British. So our three options are A, Hardy Murphy, Revolutionary War hero. B, Charles Murphy, governor of Tennessee and enemy of Andrew Jackson and hatchet throwing expert. And finally, C, Edward Murphy. Edward Murphy, leader of the Salisbury District Brigade and nicknamed the Ghost by the British.
I could see there's some points of all of them that I liked. Charles Murphy checks out, but hatchet throwing and all that and the circuit, that seemed a little much for me. If that's true, that's amazing. I want to hear more about this guy. But living in Tennessee all my life, I feel like I would have heard about this Andrew Jackson, the hatchet duels and things like that. And then the last one, there's something about that. Oh yeah, and then it doesn't add up with when the city was established either. The first one adds up with when it was established, as far as his Revolutionary War. So I'm going to go with one.
Hardy Murphy, Revolutionary War hero, is correct.
Ah, yes.
Excellent.
Wow.
So option B, Charles Murphy, was actually the life of Newton Cannon with a little John Wick thrown into it.
All right.
Also,
And-
Charlie Murphy. Did you name him after the?
A little bit. I want to put some
Okay.
hints in there. And C was actually mostly the life story of Griffith Rutherford of Rutherford County.
Well, everyone knows that.
Yeah, with a little bit of Mel Gibson's The Patriot put into there too. So by getting the last one, and by the way, the hardest question,
Yeah.
you win. You get 100%.
Yes.
The winner of Know Your Onions.
You were the winner.
Brian
on our first
Bates.
show.
Thank you.
So, Brian, we are going to tell people to go to @BrianBatesComic on Twitter and Instagram. And also we've mentioned the Nateland podcast. And that comes out every Wednesday, correct?
That is correct.
Cool.
We record it on Tuesday and it comes out on Wednesday.
Dang, I can't
Wow.
I wish I could turn episodes around that quickly,
Yeah.
but you must have a professional editor.
Yeah,
do.
listen, he fought off a spider for 6 months too. Let's never forget that. Never forget the struggle.
Yeah.
Hey, Brian, is there anything else that you'd like to plug?
Well, no, the podcast is what I was going to put. I notice you guys say it different than we do here in the South, though. How do you say it?
Wait a minute, what's this in the South business?
Well,
Oh gosh, Virginia is not the South.
yeah.
listen, we were the South till like 3 months ago, all right?
I think I know what he's saying because I'm hearing Nateland, but how should we be saying it?
Well, we say Nateland.
Yeah, okay, Nateland.
Yeah,
And-
we really
and by the way-
stress the land.
I noticed it's a good logo too, and it's very funny. I love the clips on Instagram are very, very funny. I especially liked the story about you stealing second base on the foul ball. That's very relatable, I think, to both Steve and myself. So
Yeah,
Well, thank you. That's a true story.
it's good hustle though.
I believe it.
Thank
All right.
you.
Well, hey, Brian, thanks so much for joining us and being on our first Know Your Onions.
And
Appreciate it.
the highest score ever.
That's true.
Brian
All
Bates.
right. That's great. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Brian. All right. Well, that was awesome, Steve. Thank you. I feel like we've learned a lot, and I'm so excited to be back. Season 4. It's been an exciting summer break. We had, well, for one, we found out that we got Best Podcast of Richmond and Richmond Magazine, or Richmond, the magazine Richmond.
Richmond.
We want to get that right.
Yeah.
So thank you for all of you who put a vote in for us.
Everyone who supported and voted for us, we are the 2020 Best Local Podcast by Richmond Magazine.
Yes.
So thank you for voting and supporting us. We greatly appreciate it.
And speaking of supporting us, we have some exciting news. We have a Patreon now. So I feel like we've earned it. This is now season
so.
4. We didn't break out, trying to get people to sign up for that. So anyway, go to patreon.com/Speaksies, and we've got a bunch of cool things there, and it really will help support us. I mean, we don't have a ton of overhead, but there is overhead for running the podcast, and it'll help keep us rolling. And Steve, tell them about the benefits.
Sure.
And
some of the great features we have on Patreon. We have a few bonus podcasts you can only hear there. We're also going to have some bonus video footage from some of our great interviews that we're going to be having here in Season 4. And also one of the great features is all membership tiers receive the same benefits. Any way you can support us, we'd appreciate that. We've tried to set this up in a way that is open to anyone that listens to our show. And we just greatly appreciate your support, whether voting for us, listening to us, or giving us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts.
Yep.
Anything you can do, we greatly appreciate. And thank you very much for listening.
Yeah, all right, I think that's it. So, Bob's your uncle?
Watch out for bears, and kale is from the devil.
All right.